In this video, I'm going to share 3 books that I think are really worthwhile during and after PA school. So you could get more than 3 books, obviously, but if you're only going to get 3, these would probably be my top 3. And I'll put a link to each one below, but I'll also put a link to a longer list of books on my website if you want to check that out. And these books you could use during your didactic year, during your rotations, and also when you're studying for the PANCE after PA school. So here are the 3 books. So the first book is called Clinical Pathophysiology Made Ridiculously Simple. So this book is great. I love this book. So it's got a section on all the common body systems, all the major body systems, I should say. So cardiovascular, pulmonary, renal, GI, endocrine, hematology, nervous system, rheumatology, reproductive, and then some cases. So it explains the physiology, like how does it work, what does it do, and then the pathophysiology, what could go wrong. But it does it in a way that's easy to understand, easy to digest. It's not just like bullet points on a PowerPoint, but it's like actually explaining kind of in reasonably layman's terminology, like how things work. So it made it a lot easier to understand all those systems and kind of figure out how everything works. So I would use that during your physiology class, which is in the first year, early on in the first year. And then I would read each section again when you're going through clinical medicine, which is like when you learn about problems with the cardiovascular system and how to treat them. So that's clinical medicine. Like what you would actually do in real life. So I'd use it both of those times, and then, maybe even read it again when you're studying for the PANCE. But that's my first book. Love that book. I would highly recommend you get a copy of that book, and there's a link below. So the second book I wanted to share, this one is more for your rotations, for your clinical rotations, and it's called First Aid for the Wards, because the wards, I guess, refers to like the core rotations during medical school. So this book is for medical students, but guess what? PA students are very similar to medical students in terms of when, we each do an emergency medicine rotation for a month or so. We each do, a surgery rotation for a month or so, and so on. So this book kind of guides you through those rotations. And so it has a section on emergency medicine, internal medicine, neurology, OB-GYN, pediatrics, psychiatry, and surgery. So a lot of your really important rotations. So it'll get most of your rotations. And what it'll do is it'll teach you some really high yield medical stuff about each one of those, as well as other tips about what to think of and be aware of just in terms of how to approach that rotation. So super valuable for that. It'd be good to even start reading before your rotations, but especially before you start the rotations and for each one of those rotations. So for that purpose, I would get that book for your PA school rotations and go through each section as you're going along. And I think it'll help you be a lot more mentally prepared for each of those rotations. So the third book I wanted to share or recommend is First Aid for the USMLE Step 2 CK. So this is a book made for medical students to use for their first big board exam after 2 years of medical school. So why do I recommend this for PA students? Because it covers, cardiology and pulmonology, and covers each of those body systems and gives you the high yield material that you'd want to know. So when would you want to use this? I'll kind of go backwards. It's a good resource to study for the PANCE, so your board exam after PA school. But then kind of going back in time, it would also be good to read through each section before you do a rotation related to that. If you're going to do a GI rotation, for example, then you'd read the gastroenterology section. If there's any relevant sections, you read those before a rotation. It's going to kind of help get you mentally prepared. And then also even during like your didactic year of school, it would be good to at least kind of breeze over these sections just to kind of get a little more familiar with the terms and stuff before you go through the pulmonology section in clinical medicine or whatever. Maybe you don't memorize everything that time, but you just get familiar with it, and then it makes your class easier, and then you go over it again before your rotation and one more time before the PANCE. So it's really high yield stuff, really useful. So again, that's First Aid for the USMLE Step 2 CK. So there's a link to each of those books below and a link to a longer list of books that I have on my website if you want to check that out. Hopefully that's helpful. If you're thinking about the PA career, but you haven't decided for sure, I've got a video here where I talk about 5 advantages of being a PA versus being a doctor. And I've got a video here where I compare being a PA to being a nurse practitioner. So feel free to check one of those out as well. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.